we all look at the recommendation, for example, on having a standalone femicide law. We expect that then there are other things, because it will affect many other things. Yes. If even I, as a lawyer, I look and say, very good recommendation, it will take us very far, and it will really go into curbing femicide. But also, when is femicide femicide? Okay? So there's got to be that discussion, there's got to be that debate, so that we don't have now all cases of robbery, for example, being termed wrongly and then now being reversed. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachael Mwikali. I'm the Executive Director, Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders Kenya, and I sit in the Youth Advisory Board for the Royal Danish Embassy in Kenya, as well as the Global Board to advise the Minister of Development Cooperation in Denmark. And also, the fact that I'm having Mary from the UN Women, I also sit in the Advisory Board for the UN Women project they are doing on technology-facilitated GBV that's supposed to work in supporting women human rights defenders. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
I'm so excited, and the fact that today's conversation, we're going to see the track on how gender justice work has been done in Kenya, as well as Audit. And I know you have a rich experience from engaging at the AU processes, Kenya processes, when it comes to policy. So I'd really love to know, who is Mary, the person? And then Mary, the who's the community, meaning the background.
Mary Njeri, that's it. Whenever I'm asked to introduce myself, all I can say is that my name is Mary Njeri. Bas.
From where?
I come from Subukia. I'm very inter-county. I was born in Laikipia County, but brought up in Nakuru County in Subukia. Nice. I don't know whether you know where Subukia is. I studied in Kakamega County, in Kiambu County, in Nandi County, but I also now live in Machakos County.
So you're in my county. Welcome.
But I'm married in Kajiado County.
Wow.
So I'm quite cross-county, so I like the Kenya outlook. So that's it. So I'm really in touch with people, with communities. I like community work. Professionally, I'm an advocate. I practice only on women's human rights issues. I've not managed to practice on commercial matters.
Which is also good. However, I like the whole intersecting part of your face. Like you're the true representation of Kenya in terms of counties and everything. So Mary, I know we have been working with you, and also you have been working with many civil society organizations as well as diplomatic missions. Last year, we saw a surge or a crisis on femicide in the country. And I know you and women have been working so much on also ending femicide in Kenya. So I'd really like to know from your end, what are the programs, activities, even policy that UN Women is putting in place or has been doing to address femicide in Kenya and any form of gender-based violence?
You asked that as a first question, so we start on a sad note. Femicide, you know, is the ultimate GBV, is the ultimate result. It's so final that even if it was by mistake, even if you go and say it was not intended, the person is gone, like forever. As children would say, forever, they're never coming back. So it's a very fatal kind of GBV. So we recognize that and we take that with a lot of weight. In terms of programming within Kenya, and of course we don't work in a vacuum, we look at also things that are happening within the region. We look at issues of policy because we believe policies can really change things. I know social norms are very good in terms of having positive social norms change. However, policy can determine things. Just like a mere example of how we were driven by policy to be able not to carry paper bag anymore, to be able not to be smoking everywhere anymore. So policies change. So we look at prevention through policies, but so we look at regional level. And at regional level, you know, UN Women has really been propagating around the African Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. So good thing, the convention is adopted. So, and the convention includes nuances that are coming up now, issues of TFGBV, technologically facilitated GBV, issues of femicide, but also in country, then looking at how does policy, how do the laws get enhanced. So I know with the technical working group, the presidential technical working group on GBV, including femicide, they have proposed, and we are waiting to see the fuller content of the report. They are proposing, or there are many suggestions around having standalone femicide law. Yeah. So policy, law, reform, then really plays a big part. The other part that we work on when it comes to prevention is programming around positive social norms change. How do we ensure that it's no longer normal to just kill someone? And yesterday, I was just telling you just before that I attended the Ending Femicide Garage that was there yesterday, the Mascan organized by Usikimye. And when you look at the norm, why, when you look at all those people, why is it normal? Why is it that a girl can die? Even yesterday as we were in that process, there was a report about a woman that had been killed every day. If you look at our statistics now, we are having like about 1.8 women dying every day. And those are the ones that are reported. Yeah. Remember, Mwikali, there are those that are hurt today, but may not succumb today. They may succumb 3 weeks later. So those are probably unaccounted for. So the numbers are deep. And so looking at social norm change, how do we make it not okay? How do we know it's not okay? And one of the amazing things, negatively though, is that there was technical working group on ending femicide, let's shorten it that way, but then it never stopped. You know, there's a way, if you hear, sai tunaangaliwa, you know, so it will go down. You'll know that, since hiyo kitu ianzishwe, things have gone down. But no, it didn't. Like, there was no reprieve, like, oh, you know, for the last 1 week, we have not had anything. And it's at all ages. So again, prevention, looking at things, positive norms that could change, but also looking at response. How do we support? Because again, when it comes to femicide, there are many people that are affected, including families that are affected. And when we have impunity, like femicide happens, lakini utafanya. So in the process, that person doesn't get, justice doesn't come to the family, but also this person doesn't learn and the community doesn't stop. So there's need to also be very strict around how we implement the law, how we actually enhance access to justice, how criminal justice system can work towards prohibition and towards punishing enough so that it prevents. So those programs buttress. Of course, none is perfect on their own. The best would be, what do we do to stop, to prevent, not even to stop, to prevent. But all those put together, they could enhance prevention.
No, it's really interesting in terms of how you're really breaking it down, because I've seen even now with the current gender justice politics, people are like, we should not look more on response, we look on prevention. However, we still need response. So how do we draw the balance?
I think the best would be to prevent. You know, the usual adage of prevention is better than cure, would have primary health care coming your way so that you're protected from getting the disease. So prevention would be the best. But we know that there are elements that will still perpetuate violations. So response is equally important. And response, one is to restore the person and to dignify the person, but also that in responding, you actually make someone know this thing counts. And I'll give you an example. If you go, let's say, to my village in Subukia, it's very like uko ndani ndani. If you go to Subukia and then a child is defiled, a woman is killed, and nothing happens to that perpetrator, the next one will do.
Yes.
So the fact that then you're responding, you're giving adequate manner of, be it the care, psychosocial support, be it the medical, be it the police, the justice system, speedy justice system, then the rest of the villagers in Subukia will know hii kitu haina mchezo. Huyo mtu amefungwa maisha, you know, ama kijana nani bado yuko ndani. But where you just see them walking around, even freer than they appeared before, causing threats, and making the victim's family actually close themselves in, it's wrong. It actually emboldens the perpetrator. So response is very important, not only for the purposes of the person that has been hurt, but the survivor and the victim's family, but also for the community to know it counts and there's the law. Because saa zingine unasikia saa mimi ni maskini, nitaenda wapi, nitasaidiwa na nani? No, it shouldn't be like that, you know? So it should matter that it works. But also in doing it, then there should be some essential package that it's nothing, it's not anything. It shouldn't be afadhali chochote. No, there's got to be some essential package. For example, when someone gets psychosocial support, how is it that we really indignify people? So they should get some psychosocial support to restore themselves. But also, when they go to hospital, this stigma, when they go to the police, this shaming, this bystander syndrome. I once had a small girl client and she stopped going to school and she said, nikienda ata Sunday school, ata wamama wanasimama kuni point. And she's 9. So the stigma that causes, so it's not only a service provider that has a duty, but all of us have duty to respond and respond appropriately. So these packages need to, the government also needs to really speed up and also match what should be appropriate. Like when someone goes to, how long should they take? Can you imagine if you go to a hospital and you're seated there waiting to tell your case, a whole 2-3 hours, and then after that you're asked dehumanizing question. After that you're sent back to the police station around where the perpetrator just walks very freely. So the whole package should be very dignifying for the woman. And the access to justice should be seen to be fast enough. Issues of confidentiality are very important. So where you hear that, oh, it was in open court, how is that now? It shouldn't be. Even when you're, you know, I've heard people say that when you have cases in camera, you have the victim and the mother, for example, or the survivor, the child, for example, there, and the relative who are giving evidence in camera. Granted, good. Then you have the doctor in open. But when they're describing the act and the way the person was hurt and the manner of injuries the person, they are on this person. So the whole community is hearing, and when they look at you, they see what the doctor was saying. So there's need for the whole sensitization so that access to justice does not become painful, but also does not become long. Yeah. Again, justice delayed is justice denied. These terms could be very pedestrian, but they are real to that person. That person is real. If a person is defiled, if a family lost a daughter at 19, she was maybe 19, and they lose a daughter in 2022, and now we are in 2025, and the case is still lingering. In 2027, the case, I mean, are you supposed to have then moved on, you know, or are you supposed to relive this thing every day, you know? So the need for speedy justice then becomes good for response.
Yeah, I'm really impressed, Mary, on how you're breaking it and also giving lived experience and realities in the ground. However, I know there's a lot of viewers and grassroots movements, women rights organizations that feel, for example, either do we really know the mandate of UN Women? Would you be in a position just to explain the mandate of UN Women? Because there are levels, even before I interacted with UN Women, I was like, mbona sioni UN Women kwa maandamano? Why am I not seeing statement? And also our engagement with Antonia last time, I could now, like when you said, and she said, our role also, we need to engage with government. So what's the really, in a simple English or simple Kiswahili, what's the mandate of UN Women in a country like Kenya?
UN Women is a UN agency concerned with gender equality and empowerment of women, okay? So it looks at issues of gender and how then do we really empower women to achieve gender equality. Now, just like any other agency, you come to a country and this country has to be a member state. So at the end of the day, Kenya is a member state of the United Nations, of the African Union. So you're here on the invite, so to call it, of the government. And that's why you see, whenever a new person comes, an ambassador comes, a UN head comes for the country, they go and get accredited through the foreign ministry. So there's that balance. Now, when you come to a country, remember the country is a member state.
Yes.
So kama member state inasema na sisi hatutaki kuwa member, pia UN haiwezi kuwa.
Yes.
Okay? However, because you are here as an agency, UN Women therefore works with government to say you're a member state and you know you became a member, and within that membership there's gender equality. And on issues of gender equality, UN Women ndio kitengo ambacho kikatokuwezesha. Lakini the duty remains with the member state. Okay? But kuna ule uwezekano kuwa watasaidiana. Okay? So therefore, it's not a war. It's not combativeness. It's that we complement each other's services. We complement each other's support. So for example, when you look at generation equality, really propelled by United Nations, UN Women particularly. So UN Women will, with other agencies, will come together and say, oh, for gender equality, we are thinking there are certain areas where we need to emphasize, we need to emphasize, we need to proactively work on. So comes a good program like generation equality. So, and comes to Kenya and says, you're a member state of the United Nations. There's generation equality. We want to see gender equality in our generation. Yeah. We do not want to die before we achieve gender equality. So Kenya says, yes, why not? I mean, we are a member state, and we would want to participate in this, and we would want to press our commitment to this. So Kenya becomes a commitment maker. Actually, Kenya, for example, is an action coalition leader on ending GBV and FGM. So therefore, but then says, we can't do it alone. We have placed our political commitment on the table, but we can't do it alone. So come help us, including Mwikali and Grassroots women, including women's rights organizations, like come together, including private sector. Yeah. Come together. As a country, we are committing to budgeting, to placing budgets on the table. So someone else may say, oh, as long as you put a shilling, we will match it. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. So that's the way then ni kama tu policies are made by government. Yeah. Legislation is supported, is proposed by government, made by the legislatures, but all of us are implementers. Okay? So that's the kind of relationship it is. So why don't we, because we don't take sides. Yeah. We are on the side of the law. I mean, like we are on the side of the goodness. Okay? So kama wanawake wanadhulumiwa, we will say so. But then we will say that government has committed itself to ending GBV. So if you look again, if I go back to generation equality, because the government has made 12 commitments.
An amazing commitment.
Yes.
Very feministic commitments.
Yes. So
yeah.
we would be saying, you've made 12 commitments. One of them is on supporting survivors. Yes. So tafuta pesa, survivor akiumia, aweze kuregesha. You know, you need a policy. We have, for example, Sexual Offences Act. There are areas that need review. Please, let's support and let's have sexual offences amended or reviewed. Okay? So that's the kind of complementarity that is supposed to be there. Yes.
Yeah. Because when Mary, you talk about, like, if there's one document I was a big fan, and I'm a big fan. First, not even one, like policy and documents, the Constitution of Kenya, Sexual Offences Act, and then the GF, which is Gender Equality Forum. Commitments by the Kenyan government. And this is something that Kenyans need to know, to own, and to make government accountable. And I remember before the former president left, His Excellency Uhuru, the commitment, when you read it, you're like, now we are ending GBV. Now we are ending femicide. And now we are ending any form of violence against women and girls. But now we have a new regime that has come in place where we are seeing that they're saying that they want to end femicide and gender-based violence to the level of not only having a state department on gender, but also having a woman advisor to the president, women's rights advisor to the president. But we are seeing so many cases increasing. We are seeing the commitment from GF, which was super amazing, work well done, not being implemented. So where do we go wrong when it comes to policy? Because we are not short of policy. We have policy, but where do we go wrong? What are the gaps?
I think you're right. I mean, obviously, right, that we have a lot of policy, we have a lot of legislation. Yes. And we have political will, because then when we look at the commitments, we'll call it political will. Yes. If we look at the departments, if we look at even the advisor's position, it means we've even looked at the technical working group on femicide. Yes. It still shows a great commitment to ending violence against women. So it's in the implementation that we find we have the book, but that book has to make sense, again, to my auntie in Subukia. Ukimuuliza yeye atasema sitaki kuuawa. She doesn't care. She doesn't even know what the law should say. Yeye anajua yeye hataki kuuawa. Okay? So therefore, in terms of the government, so there are measures. If you look at the law, even sahi hatuna law on femicide, lakini tuna penal code. Yeah. So it means the community the government should, because the government is the one that gives us these policies and is the one implements. And if you look at kutoka kule mwanzo hadi mwisho, kutoka kwa chief, kutoka kwa nyumba kumi, we have structures that should be working. So therefore, it should make sense to someone in the deep of Lokichar, in the deep of Loangareani, in the deep of Sericho and Modagashe, that really no one is above the law, whether a politician or not. So the law remains, but the implementation of it. So therefore, we should have accountability by government at all levels. So uyo chief akimwachilia, ama uyo chief akikula mbuzi, even they should be arrested. And when they are not arrested, then upia uyo mwenye hamu arrest, you know, like you make it count. You make it personally punitive. Because part of the problem is that ni nani haswa.
Yes.
You see, it shouldn't be ni nani haswa. Kuna structures.
You're very clear around the laws and the policy and the implementation. Now I want to look at it in terms of duty bearer, right holder. We're in a country where we are seeing still suspects of femicide in leadership position. I'll give an example. Last year, when also as End Femicide, we did some of the protests. There was a lady who was murdered by the husband who was a member of county assembly. You can imagine a member of county assembly. We have had cases of governors, suspects of femicide cases. So to what level do we hold accountability to people still are in power, committing the same crime, and then we are saying we have a goodwill to end femicide and GBV, but the reality in terms of the leadership we are not seeing. As UN Women, how do you come in that?
Well, both as UN Women, but even as a Kenyan.
Even as an advocate, yeah.
You know, there are many segments around this thing. Remember, we have an adversarial criminal justice system where someone is innocent till proven guilty. And all doubt goes to the benefit of the accused person. That's an adversarial criminal justice system. But again, at the same time, so it really requires the prosecution to really be able to give evidence, okay? Evidence, I mean, we have seen we've seen investigative reports that are very very concrete, very, very well done. So I believe that in Kenya we have good energy and even good knowledge and know-how of how to conduct very good investigations that are watertight. So that the prosecution should, the investigators and the prosecution should be held to account. Because remember, when a case goes to court, and I'm not saying court is clean, no. But when a case goes to court, it depends on the evidence. Because remember, this accused person ana mtu wake pia, ana wakili anamtetea. Okay? But there's need, hapo kwa kutetea, there's always need for another public, like, you know, in some jurisdictions, they normally have a public eye. Like, unasikia mimi sikuwa na wakili, niliangalia tu, sina mtu wa kunisaidia, sina mtu wa kutembea na mimi. And I think it's a big gap that I see women's rights organizations, civil society really playing in terms of providing paralegal, in terms of providing pro bono lawyering. Because someone yuko pale, wakili wake ni the state council. And in some cases, investigator ndio anakaa ndio wakili wake. So while the investigator is supposed to be neutral, because then they're investigating they are on the side of justice. Okay? Ndio wasiumize pande na wasiumize pande ile. Lakini wakili wa a survivor ni huyu. So that has to be very humane. And justice has to not only be done, but to be seen to be done. Yeah? Because I think we also lose hope when we have people that maybe are holding so many files in their hands, and so you're just a number. And so when they ask, amesema nini kotini? Kesi ni siku ingine. Rudi polisi upatiwe bond. And you're thinking, hey, so kumeenda aje? Kwani hukusikia? The words are not familiar.
And
the language.
An example is the case of Agnes Tirop.
You know.
An athlete was murdered. The quote-unquote suspect was given a bond, disappeared. The family is still crying for justice. So
you see, again, we have a beautiful constitution, and we all have these constitutional rights. Right to bond is a constitutional right. The amount is discretion of the court, and that's why you find in some cases the bond will be very high, because the court really recognizes the high stakes. But you know, look at a case of corruption. You'll use the same money to pay for corruption. But you see, we cannot fault the giving of the bond, because you have to show reasons enough beyond the constitutional right as to why someone should be held. So you'll find sometimes they'll take away your passport. Okay? So if the whole system is accountable, it means you shouldn't get another passport. Look at a place like Kenya. What do you mean kuna mtu amepotea? You know, we have kutoka assistant, kutoka nyumba kumi, if systems were to work. Even when you go to your shags, you small Mwihaki, I mean Mwikali, when you go to your shags, doesn't even your neighbor know?
They know.
They know.
My chief that she has arrived
yeah,
today.
she's arrived today. You get.
Yeah.
So also to say that someone has disappeared, it's also not very, I mean, we should be more accountable than that. And I think there, in terms of why don't we see justice happening, is because the justice system is a big web. And we have to tighten the chain. And everyone is accountable. Look at a case of, if there's murder, then someone is notified. Maybe, what's the reaction? Maybe there'll be a scream. When there's a scream, there's someone, a villager who will come, and they are educated enough to know, do not interfere with the evidence. Okay? Probably they'll arrest the person, if the person is not, again, big enough, because also the village, you tend to see that they also take sides. Look at women that are lynched because ati wao ni warogi. Who lynches them? It's really the community. Yeah. So you find we all have a responsibility. Now, that elder or the village elder, the nyumba kumi, the chief, they start the chain now. Then we go to the police. We are on the chain. We go for medical checks and medical treatment, either to do forensic for the body. They are in the chain. The forensic lab, it's on the chain and should not delay when we get the results. You know, when we go to the process, when the investigator, when they start opening the investigation, they're in the chain. When we go now to the doctor, they're in the chain. When we go to the law to the justice system in terms of the judiciary, they're in the chain. When you go to the probation officer, who comes and says, oh, they are so remorseful, wamesema wataoa msichana. You know, they are also on the chain.
Yeah.
So we all have a lot of people. But also, honestly, to be fair to the justice system, when defilement happens in a village, who eats the goat? Is it only the chief? You know? And that's why you find even in the court users, remember as a country, we even have National Council of Access to Justice.
Yeah.
And it's the one that takes care or galvanizes around issues of court users committees. And look at in the court users committee, there's everyone, you know, including an elder, including a religious person, so that to try and see, tunaponyokea wapi, shida iko wapi. Okay, so for that, then you can see at a certain level, there's the goodwill. But then, tunaponyokea wapi? And when you listen to court users committees sittings, they try to say, and they give an example. Then they hold and say, nani hakumleta kotini? Bona bond haikupatianwa. You know, the bond that makes you come back to court. You know, but also when witnesses are not given, because witnesses are given money. I mean, like transport reimbursement to be able to come to court. So there's need for us to actually take, and that's where the good role of, for example, women's rights organizations, women's human rights defenders really come in very handy, that they watch. When you hear, like in a criminal justice system, the lawyer ni state counsel. But you see, there are many cases where you see, I'm watching brief. You know, they have no role, but they are watching. And we need to assume that role because it's not watertight. We must watch brief so that justice, na nakwambia, if in a village, msichana mmoja anadefailiwa and that guy gets life sentence, wengine wataogopa.
And that's also like I asked the question, Mary, because working with the Femicide movement and some of the people even in this room, we have worked together through the journey of even going to families across the counties and even engage in the task force to be able to understand that first, women, we are not homogeneous. And girls are not homogeneous. And the reality is that when we leave loopholes, and I'm happy you have spoken about forensic. Mary Nakasi, she's a good friend of mine. And there's a time we had this call in a conversation that many people are not looking from their forensic point of view, that if you lose this evidence, we're not going to get justice. However, there's a point of why is access to justice so expensive to women when it comes to GBV cases? Why is access to justice takes a long time? We had a case of a woman human rights defender, Elizabeth Ikaru. The reason, I think, in the cases that we have dealt with as women human rights defenders and feminist activists, it was one of the cases that did not take so much time. And when I mean so much time, it took not less than 4 years. We have seen cases taking 9 years, 10 years, and more than that. So to what level, even with the new laws that also even me, I'm looking forward to the recommendation from the task force to the president, how do we make the law feministic to communities, even to the public, to task the judiciary, that when they give right to life, when they defend right to life of these women that have been killed or justice, that the law will not play its role to tweak it to work on behalf of the perpetrator. Because most of us have given a recommendation that if there's a good political will, there are people who told us there are countries like Rwanda, when Kagame said that kwanzia leo wanawake wasidhulumiwe na ikastopishwa. But in Kenya, we feel that there's no good political will around femicide. Yeah, we feel there's no. So as UN women, with other commitments, ICPD, GF, the law and everything, how do we envision to this reality of, these are the things that we have given, intellectual labor, sweat, blood, to ensure, even with the Beijing commitments, that we need to feel it. How do we make the ground feel it, that the government is willing, collectively, as civil society, your role in advising, how do we make it? We know clearly, even you have said it as an advocate, there's a lot of chain of multi-level engagement. How do we ensure that we put pressure on accountability? Yeah.
So you see, when for example, and you've used the good example of the technical working group.
Yes.
We hope as well that the report comes out in a quick short period, so that then we can be able to look at the recommendations.
Yes.
And then from there, we can be able to hold the government to account and say that there's this recommendation. Remember, it's a technical working group, presidential. So therefore, when the report goes to the president and it's released, it will have been released by the presidency. So therefore, when we look and say, for example, there's a recommendation to have a femicide-specific law.
Yeah.
So we expect that then experts will quickly come together. Kenya Law Reform Commission is already established. And you see, that's what, when a country, for example, is giving its report on its commitments, they would be asking the same thing. They say, we have Kenya Law Reform Commission. It's in place, it's funded. We have the ministry that would give the policy guidelines. We have legislatures that are in session to do the law. Okay? So therefore, you find in terms of the government counting its political will, it would show. But we need to actually say the reality on the ground is not the same. And I liked days when we used to have shadow reporting, and I don't know where it went to. So that you say the reality on the ground, it is true, we have this recommendation, but on the ground, people are suffering. On the ground, there's no good service. On the ground, we still have 20 people missing. On the ground, we still have a case taking 4 years.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the State of Judiciary as a report, then we look at how long is it taking to access justice.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we all look at the recommendation, for example, on having a standalone femicide law, we expect that then there are other things, because it will affect many other things. Yes. If even I, as a lawyer, I look and say, very good recommendation, it will take us very far, and it will really go into curbing femicide. But also, when is femicide femicide? Okay? So there's got to be that discussion, there's got to be that debate, so that we don't have now all cases of robbery, for example, being termed wrongly and then now being reversed. Okay? So that we don't have people kuponyokea ndani na double jeopardy. Because double jeopardy remains something we cannot maybe have as a democracy. Like you cannot be tried here and be tried here. Yeah. Okay? So ukiona for femicide, rules ni stringent, utaanza kuponyoka pande unakuja pande.
Yeah, because I think that's where they're playing us.
You see, so there's need for that discussion. There's need for learning how have other, like for example, for UN women, we are looking and saying, how do other jurisdictions do? So to us, we have seen, let's learn from other countries as well. Yes. To just bring other jurisdictions, like how are you doing it in Rwanda? How are you doing it in India? How is Colombia doing it? How is it happening in Italy? How is it, how did you manage? Because it's also not easy, because we are the same ones.
Yes.
You know, Kenya is a very litigious country as well. Okay, so if you put someone on double jeopardy, they will want to have been tried under penal code as a murder. And they'll say, the motive, me, I never killed her because she was a woman. I killed her because it was a crime of passion, it was you know, this was a robbery, it was in self-defense. All the other ingredients will have been fulfilled. But we know that we need to capture it well so that it still remains within the realm of femicide. Yeah. And that has to be brought by prosecution, and that's why public participation becomes very necessary. So that this discussion can be had. It's also good to get negative soundings, so that then we can feel tumejadiliana ya kutosha. You know? Maswali yameulizwa, tumeweza kujibu, so that we don't wait and we are testing it and it's failing at the time of implementation. You see? And so therefore, when you look at our gap, our big gap is in implementation. So hoping that then when we do these discussions, when all hands are on deck, then we can also be able to know we all contribute. Even bystanders. Let me tell you, a bystander really contributes Because look at a rape. Rape happens in privacy. Yeah, you occur someone, and because you won't go to Kenyatta Avenue in the day and find it happening. It will be someplace under a thicket or something, and a bystander just looks and says, hey, mimi sitaki kuguzana na maneno ya watu, mimi naogopa kwenda kotini. So issues of witnesses, the prosecution won't get watertight a thing.
But does it also come in terms of witness protection? Because one of the things I've seen around the cases, and I'll give an example of Machakos, where I also come from, you find like a case has happened, like let's say 20 kilometers, or a distance where you can travel, let's say with a matatu for 2 hours, and you pay more than 1,000 to get to one point to another. However, you still want to report as someone who have survived, let's say femicide or GBV, but the distance, the services are not close to the people. So which for me is also like, that's also like the law becoming not inclusive or services because you're not able to have what you need to be able to report. Understanding the state has a lot of resources. Why not prioritize most of the state resources in gender budgeting in response? If you ask me, even when we pushed, because the end femicide we started in 2018, coming to say we are giving you 100 million, I'm like, 100 million is not worth it, our life. It's just like the recommendation will be given by UN Women and Femicide, civil society, and other institutions. You just put it in place or make it as a political decision that clearly, even any leader should not be vying any political position if you have been on suspect tainted, or tainted with femicide. And people have participated. But the state, I don't feel it's reacting.
But look, under the Constitution, Chapter 6, you would not be allowed to contest when you're tainted with corruption. But look, under Elections Act, what do? They went and said, should the case be on an appeal? So, Kenyans are litigious.
So much, huh?
Yeah.
I know we are running out of time.
Yeah, so you'll have the law providing that you shouldn't, but then someone says, when is the case concluded?
Yeah.
The case is still on appeal. So someone will file an appeal. They are very aware it's a failing appeal, but the case will have an appeal.
I want us to touch on technology, facilitated gender-based violence. One, targeting women human rights defenders, like myself and yourself, we're also first respondents. And then also women in general. We're seeing targets targeting women politicians. We saw what happened to Martha Karua in Tanzania. In terms of the sexism and stuff and everything. But at the same time, we want to look at it from a survivor-centered feminist perspective. What ways has UN Women done, acknowledging I also sit in the advisory board that also UN Women is supporting to ensure that we come up with tools and mechanisms to ensure that women HRD like myself are supported. However, I know there's been a lot of investment. What investment have you done so far to ensure that we're able also to have technology, facilitated GBV within the space, at the same time having a survivor-centered approach through your partners?
So one, we support partners. We work through partners, you're right. So we support partners that really look at issues of ending or preventing and protecting against technologically facilitated GBV. And we know technology is here, and technology is a good thing. And so there's many positivities around it. It's the one that is going to help us. Like, even this will be out there through technology. Yes. So it's enabling us to do awareness. It's enabling in terms of, say, response, in terms of reporting, in terms of hotlines. So technology is good. However, technology gets abused. And when it gets abused, the women get the brunt of it. So the technologically facilitated GBV is one of the areas that then we are looking at and saying, this is an area that one should be recognized as a GBV, and two, that is an area where evidence building should be taken, because of the nature of technology and the volatility within which the technology moves. Sometimes you're not able to capture evidence, and like deletions happen very quickly, or the splicing, or just the fact that then someone can easily just pick up and match up pictures, and so it can be doubted in court. So how do we ensure that this gets watertight? What are the areas in which it can be done? However, there's the whole issue of bringing other stakeholders in it. Because, for example, the police, do they understand how to collect evidence around technologically facilitated GBV? How do we work with the CAK, for example, in ensuring that if there are nudities around a person and there's a report that is made, that those nudities are not expanded any further, that you do not continue to abuse the person? How do you hold that person to account? How do you ensure? Because the phone is one big tracker, even when it comes to femicide. It's one big tracker where investigators are able to capture people, are able, even 1 year later, you'll put on your phone and will be able, you'll just be caught up with. So how do we ensure that the technologically facilitated GBV does not also overwhelm the service provider, and therefore we get these people getting off the hook? So it's very important how then we, as UN Women, for example, we are already having areas and working with partners that are working on it. Both those that are enhancing, like you've seen there's Wakili AI, how do women get to get to know their legal rights through some application like Wakili AI. But at the same time, how do you report? How do you have an application in your phone that by a small trigger you can be able to reach a police station to be able to report? So these are areas that are very growing and growing fast area, fast growing area. But it's one of the crimes that now we are recognizing, and it's really having dire effects.
And especially that the fact that AI also is not very Africanist.
Yes,
it's also very very global north oriented. Yeah.
Yes, but it's here, you know. So as much as possible, looking at it and seeing how then do we take advantage of it, other than get bogged down by its presence. But how do we ensure that we are making lemonade out of the lemon that it could be? And so therefore, if, for example, is a court system, how do they actualize and actually find someone guilty of an offense of technologically facilitated GBV?
Yeah, and it's an area also I like to encourage viewers to take it seriously, because most of the time we normalize. We're like, someone has violated me online, but I'll be like, ni social media. Even especially Twitter. And this is something that also the lawmakers, policymakers, and people who work on data need to look into it. And even ourselves within the system to understand, yes, technology is here. It has its own advantage, but also it has its own disadvantage. So as we wrap up, Mary, there are two key questions around resourcing. Money, which is very important. We are seeing global shift where funders are closing out, cutting money from gender, GBV work, money being taken to military or private sector, but at the same time affecting our work and affecting our lives, the USAID and everything. So from your own perspective as UN Women, what strategies and mechanisms are you putting in place, or would you advise women rights organizations to be able to put in place to ensure that we don't stop this work? Because there's no funding, it doesn't mean it will not be violated. Because there's no funding, it does not mean it will not be killed, for example. However, we don't want these things to happen. So what mechanism are you putting in place, or even you, as an expert in this space, you can advise more women rights organizations, or even funders who have decided to stay?
Well, I think, well, there are two things. That one, there's a global pushback against women's rights. And you've seen a lot. Even when you talk about violence against women, someone says, oh, but hata jana kuna kijana mwingine najua aligongwa. You know, like, so we've started having a lot of counter narrative. So there's the global pushback. But also number two, there's the resourcing that has relatively reduced. So there's a need to diversify. How do we diversify our resources? How do Africans, and you say the North, yes, has done this, but as an African country, how do we ensure that our resources can be able to take care of these things? Because we have resources internally. if you look at all the things we've talked about, prevention, response, we have the government, we have a private sector that would be accountable, we have communities that have been supporting, and so the need to enhance and really ensure that that shilling counts. That the government one, like look at GEF commitment. Commitment number 2 is on increasing budgets. So therefore, we ensure that we hold government to account to increase budgets. Look at one of the commitments on enhancing the lives of survivors and making them have economic empowerment to be able to recoup back their energies and get back into dignified lives. So those are the resources that really need to be traced and to be found and to actually go to the right pockets. So that you can imagine if everyone was able to just like take care of themselves, because again, I'm told it's called black tax, that we all have a relative or rather a neighbor or other, someone that we have to support. If those people were supported by a system, then you don't have to. So you find that we also have increased burden because then the economy is not doing well, especially for women. So for us, looking at, even when we diversify, even when private sector looks at and says, oh, we are more interested in economic empowerment, it is okay. But remember, if a woman is abused, they will not add value to their economic empowerment. So we need to have them free from that encumbrance, free from that downtroddenness of they won't be able to make a decision around their money, they are vulnerable to abuse, they go to a chama, get the money, they can't even come to have a multiplier of that money because then it's being taken off their hands. So, but once they are empowered and they are able, so if you want a woman, for example, if it's a private sector in terms of a bank, if you want a woman bankable, you need to increase their value, you need to increase their economic value so that then they are bankable. And to make them bankable, we need to reduce their vulnerability, which is caused, for example, by violence against women and girls.
Success, something that we want to celebrate in terms of success around the work on GBV.
I think we have many successes, and we've seen. I mean, there are special courts that have been that have been established. That's a good success. We've seen commitments. We've seen even the technical working group on GBV. Never mind, the report is not yet out, but the fact that then it was established, that's a good success. We've seen that women's rights organizations are really bold and are able to push forward. Even when there's pushback, they're able to push forward. These are successes. We've seen, like for example, we are doing a study with the University of Nairobi on establishing the social norms. What is the cause? What is the root cause of violations? So there are successes, and once we know the root causes, then we have better target. We know we'll target the right places. But we've also seen girls really increasing in the field of education. And so we know their vulnerabilities are reducing because then they'll be able to get to account. We've seen many women taking up positions of leadership, not only political leadership, but leadership at various levels, participating effectively in the world, in the commercial world, in market. And so those things will help reduce vulnerability. So we look at laws, for example, law of succession. Law of succession is also undergoing some level of amendments, be it through judge-made law or be it law reform, active law reform. We've seen law of sexual offenses, again, going through amendments to enhance it, to make it better. So I think there are successes. It's not all gloom, it's not all doom. And we always have to say, there are some yields that have gone on. Law on anti-FGM, we don't hear drums beating as loud as they may have been, but then it enables us go now deeper and check, are we succeeding or is there hidden? And the fact that people are hiding, it makes them know, it makes you know that they know it's wrong. And so when they are caught, then it's going to abate, it's going to stop others from doing it. We are far from achieving a lot, but we count our successes. UN Women itself is a young agency. We are a teenager. We've just turned 15 years old.
Congrats.
Compared to other agencies that would be much older. So there's still successes. Yes, there's still successes that we can smile to and say that it's not all gloomy, and we will sail through.
Okay. So as we close up and you give your closing remarks, assume today something I learned when we did the Danida Fellowship. You're the person in power. You're now the president of Kenya. And you have the resources, the power, the human resource and everything. What will be a top 3 priority investments or as an agenda to ensure we stop or we end gender-based violence and femicide in Kenya?
One, I would, like on top of Uhuru Park, if that's where we stand, and say no one slap, because that's where it starts. Yeah. No more one slap on anyone. You know, like we have to be civil with each other. Yeah. If I hit you, I can apologize if it's accidental, but they cannot be intentional. And that there's personal responsibility. If a case fails, then there's personal responsibility of the chain. Whoever failed it then gets that personal responsibility. Number 2, putting money onto these policies so that money goes into prevention so that the communities are more aware and communities are more engaged, but also that the response services, the essential package of response is of good quality and that it really dignifies women. And 3, that I would enhance economic empowerment of everyone, of the country. Because remember, when you're broke, the next person is broke. Yeah? So it adds value when the country is up. Because when it's up economically, you will be able to say no to violation. And when you come, if you're my sister and you come to my house, I'll be able to accommodate you without thinking, na kesho tutakula. You get? So when you're economically empowered, you can be able to say no and go to your own place. Or come to my place and I accommodate you. You know? So the economic empowerment around all of us means a lot in reducing vulnerabilities.
Yeah. So as we close up, we wrap up, I want to appreciate you, Mary. I know you play a critical role. You've been supportive to the women movement in Kenya and in the region in ensuring that we're able to support other women in prevention. Support also duty bearer to ensure that all these policies, when also we push to ensure they're in place or laws, they have to be implemented. And also reminding our governments that they have a mandate as UN Women to protect the rights of women. And also reminding also the sector that we have to be keen in ensuring there's a lot of investment. Asante sana.
Karibu. And thank you for having us.
Welcome.